One loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى نحمده ونستعينه ونثني عليه ونؤمن به ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف بريته ومبلغ رسالاته العبد المؤيد الرسول المسدد المحمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. We begin this first Friday khutbah by reminding all of you and myself to maintain the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll continue with our discussion on the topic of dedicating time for worship. And of course, this is a topic that goes very much hand in hand with the days that we are going through and the weeks that are coming and the time that we are approaching, that is the coming of the month of Ramadan. And the author of 40 Hadith, when he began speaking about dedicating time for worship, he spoke specifically about the practice of salah, specifically about the act of worship of salah. And I've mentioned this many times before, I'll mention it many times in the future as well. And that is that salat, unfortunately, within our communities, within our dominant culture, is not given the value, the significance, and the importance that it has. Sometimes there's other acts of worship that are given far more significance than the act of salat. Whereas when you look into the words of the Ahlul Bayt and the words of the Quran, you find that the way they spoke of salat, they didn't speak of any other act of worship. And there are certain acts, we look at them and we think very highly of them, and we should. They have very high value. Some of them relate to the Ahlul Bayt, for example. Anything that relates to the Ahlul Bayt is going to have a high value. There's no doubt about that. But the way they spoke about salat was different compared to almost everything else. Even including this act of worship that is known as fasting. The wording of the Ahlul Bayt when it comes to fasting is one thing, when it comes to salat itself is something else. Now in our dominant cultures, especially with Ramadan around the corner, which one is given more importance? Is the Fajr Salat, waking up for Fajr Salat, given more importance in our communities? Or is it fasting and being part of the general atmosphere of Ramadan given more importance? Yes? Typically, the food festival is given more importance than waking up for Fajr. Yes, this is something that's lacking in our culture. So when you look into Quran and Hadith, you find wording that you don't find when it comes to almost any other act of worship. What did the Ahlul Bayt say about this? And some of these we touched on in the previous weeks, so I won't repeat them, I'm just touching on them. Of those things that they mentioned, is that a person who takes his salat lightly, he will not receive shafa'ah. Aloud salawat, please. Multiple ma'asumeen had mentioned this, that the person who doesn't take his salat seriously, he will be deprived of a shafa'ah. Of the other things that are mentioned when it comes to salat, is how Malikul Maut comes and visits you 5 times every day. And every day he comes to visit you, you and I assume this is a scary event, because Malikul Maut, anytime he comes, anytime the name even comes up, yes, we begin to shiver. But Malikul Maut comes to see what you're doing. He comes to see whether you're praying or not. For the one who does pray, multiple narrations tell us that his interactions with Malakul Maut are so much easier. So the narration says that the one who used to pray on time specifically, he was watchful of the times of his prayer. When Malakul Maut comes to take his soul, we've heard stories sometimes and sometimes in narrations that even during the final moments of the life of the person, Shaitan will come to try to trick this person. Shaitan will come to try to take away his belief from him. Yes? Well, the narration says if he's the type of person who used to pray on time, he used to be watchful of the times of his prayer, the narration says Malikul Maut stops Shaitan. in those moments of death. In his moments of ihtidar, Malakul Maut steps in front of him and stops him from doing what he's doing. This is the power of salat. Malakul Maut said 5 times, I come and visit. Of the other promises that the Ahlul Bayt have given to us is the promise of the 6th Imam, Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. And his promise was what? He told his companion Aban, he said, Aban, these 5 prayers, man aqama hududahunna, the one who does a good job with them. Hudud doesn't mean you just do a valid prayer. It means what? It means you do it with the etiquettes. I try, I put effort into it. وَحَافَظَ عَلَى مَوَاقِيتِهِنَّ, and he does it based on the proper times, on the best of times. He will meet Allah, وَلَهُ عِنْدَهُ عَهْدٌ. He will have a promise in his hands to have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enter him into heaven. The narration continued, we read it previously. The Imam said, but if he shows up and his 5 prayers are lacking, now it's up for debate where he's going to end up. Now they have to take a look at everything, they have to count everything, maybe yes, maybe no. But the one who prays, and generally outside of that, he is trying his best to stay away from sin, he has something in his hands. He has that coupon in his hands. He has that ticket in his hands to put it in front of Allah and say, here, I did this one. This is what the Ahlul Bayt told us. Now we move on to this hadith that I want to share, that many of us have heard, of course, but sometimes we are not able to fully comprehend it. If we can, Zunair, if we can turn up the volume just a little bit, please. Thank you so much. And that is this. This is a concept. Shia and Sunni have narrated this concept. And this narration is from our beloved 5th Imam, Al-Imam Al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. What does the 5th Imam say? The 5th Imam says, on the day of judgment, إِنَّ أَوَّلَ مَا يُحَاسَبُ بِهِ الْعَبْدُ الصَّلَاةِ. The first thing that they ask someone about on the day of judgment is his salah. فَإِنْ قُبِلَتْ قُبِلَتْ مَا سِوَاهَا. If they accept his salat, they accept everything else. Yes? The narration continues, says, وَإِنْ رُدَّتْ. If it's not accepted, nothing else is going to be accepted. Yes? Nothing else is going to be qabul from this person. Now it's a little too high. Aloud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil. It's good now. Yeah, we can leave it there. Yeah. You'll forgive me. The audio is always a sensitive thing for me. This idea, Shia and Sunni have narrated. If a salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. If the salat is rejected, it's not qabul, everything else is not qabul. Okay, so on the good side of things, everyone reads this hadith and they understand it. They say, Alhamdulillah, wonderful. So if my salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. This is the side of the hadith that's very easy, because you already have a green light. Okay, wonderful. But the other side of the narration is the scary side of the narration. And it's a side of the narration usually people don't pay much attention to. That if my salat is not accepted, the narration is saying nothing else is accepted. Now, how we interpret this narration is something we have to get into. But that's a big claim. It's a big claim from the Ahl Bayt. So in some of the courses that we teach, I give this example. If I built a 500-bed hospital, but I didn't pray. Well, I didn't pray, so my salat is definitely not accepted because there was no salat. I didn't do any salat, yes? Okay, so what does that mean for all of the other acts of worship that I've done? Does that mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reject everything else that I've done? Well, if we have a literal understanding of this narration, that is what the narration is saying, if you understand it in that way, in a literal sense, yes? But most scholars have come forward and given a different interpretation of this, because of course that interpretation has other flaws within it. One of those flaws is that at the end of the day you fasted, there should be something for this fasting. You gave charity, there should be some value for this charity. You were in Ramadan, you fed some people, there should be some value for the other acts of worship that you've done, yes? So what do they say? They say, you know what the hadith is trying to tell us is that this salat is like the cheat code to everything else. If you do a good job with your salat and it reaches a level that God looks at it and finds it worthy of acceptance. Qabool. Not just valid. It's valid, but He also looks at it because you did a good job with it, because you put effort into it, because you were attentive while you were praying, for example. He looks at it and finds it at the level of qabool. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will elevate the value of all of your other deeds that maybe you didn't do so much of a good job with to the level of qabool. It's the multiplying factor for everything else that you did. God forbid if on the flip side, I did a terrible job with my salat. Yes? I said Allahu Akbar and I'm thinking about 50 different things from the beginning of salat until the end of salat. Technically, it's still a valid salat. Technically, there's some minimal reward I still have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because God gave me a promise. If you pray, there's going to be a reward. So I prayed. But I did a terrible job with my salat. So this salat is not qabool. Doesn't mean it's not valid. It's valid. But God looks at it. He said, which part of this do you want me to accept? Your heart wasn't in this. You weren't attentive while you were praying. Okay, so it's rejected now. It's not qabool. If this one is not qabool, the narration is telling us everything else you did also decreases in value. So I went all out in Ramadan. I really worked hard. I tried to gain knowledge. I, for example, was fasting. I fed other people. I did this, I did that. Wonderful. These, in terms of their reward, have a spectrum. The multiplying factor of what that reward is going to fall on in terms of this spectrum is how you did your salat. Shia and Sunni have narrated this idea, and multiple narrations point out this idea. If your salat is qabool, everything else is qabool. If your salat is not qabool, it doesn't just create problems for your salat, it creates problems for everything else. And it makes sense, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost, He's asking for you to pray. Those other things that you're doing, while you don't care about your prayer, it shows that your intention is not the purest intention. Doesn't mean you're doing riyah when you're doing those other things, but it shows there's some problem there. Yes? I'll give you an analogy, just a personal analogy. You know, I grew up multiple years in Iran. And of course, you know, in Iran, the schooling is very, very different from here. Yes? Especially, 15 years ago. So every day the teacher walked into the classroom, and of course, physical disciplinary actions was part of the culture at that time. It was a very long time ago. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir, of course, yes. So in terms of back in the day, hopefully today it's not a thing for us. So I remember the teacher always walk into the classroom, beginning of the classroom, and the first thing that he's going to do is going to take attendance. And sometimes this teacher would forget to bring his pen, forget to bring his pencil, whatever he's going to use to take attendance, yes? So he turned to the classrooms, anyone have a pen? And the kids would scramble. Oh, I have a pen. Oh, I have a pen. I have a pen. So when it came to giving the teacher the pen, everyone wanted to do it. Everyone wanted to volunteer, yeah? Everyone wanted to take care of it. And then it baffled me how 2 minutes later, when the teacher asked, okay, who's done their homework? Who hasn't done their homework? Half of the kids who wanted so hard to have the pen in the hands of the teacher, their pen, hadn't done their homework. And then they had to get punished because they hadn't done their homework. This baffled me. It still baffles me. And this behavior of you and mine should baffle us. This is what we do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes? So, okay, so this charity, alhamdulillah, people step up. Yes? This month of Ramadan, people step up. The love of Ahl Bayt, people step up. And then some of those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us first, the most important things, then sometimes the same ones who are active in that area, they care less about those things that God cares about most. This should surprise us. This is unusual. You don't want to become that boy who offers to give the pen to the teacher, but then cares less about the more important thing. This is salat and many other acts of worship. So the narration said, فَإِن قُبِلَتْ, if it's accepted, قُبِلَ مَا سِوَاهَا وَإِن رُدَّتْ رُدَّتْ مَا سِوَاهَا. And then inshallah I'll end this first khutbah with the rest of this narration that the fifth Imam explains. He said, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ إِذَا ارْتَفَعَتْ فِي أَوَّلِ وَقْتِهَا. When the salat is elevated and it ascends at the beginning of its time. Meaning what? Meaning the time of adhan came, and I generally tried to pray at the beginning of time. Generally it fell in the time of fadila. Yes, I didn't wait 2.5 hours. I heard adhan. In 5 minutes I gathered my stuff. I went to do my wudu, so on and so forth. This is awwal waqt. Awwal waqt is not the first 30 seconds after adhan. Okay? Awwal waqt is time of fadila. I tried my best, especially earlier in the time of fadila. This is awwal waqt. Okay. He said, Inna salat idha irtafa'at fi awwal waqtiha. When you do it in the beginning of its time, and the angels are taking the salat to the heavens. It's ascending. The salat itself doesn't ascend. The angels are taking the salat to offer it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course these are metaphors, but to the best that we understand them. So what happens when they are taking the salat? رَجَعَتْ إِلَى صَاحِبِهَا. The salat either returns back to the prayer, to the person who is praying, or turns back to the person who was praying. وَهِيَ بَيْضَاءُ مُشْرِقَةٌ. And the salat is shining with light. Yes, it's emanating light. تَقُول. And then it addresses the one who just did the salat. So when I pray, my salat afterwards turns around to address me. Okay, multiple narrations have this concept. It's not just one narration. Taqul, he turns around to you and me. He says, Hafidhtani. You did a good job with me. And you didn't just put something together and say, oh, this was my salat. No, you took your time with me. You were attentive. You paid attention. You invested emotionally, mentally in me. Hafidhtani. You preserved me. Hafidhaka Allah. May Allah preserve you. You did a good job with me. May Allah do a good job with you. Yani may Allah have mercy on you. Hafidhtani, hafidhaka Allah. وَإِذَا ارْتَفَعَتْ فِي غَيْرِ وَقْتِهَا. But if this person did his salat outside of the beginning of time, بِغَيْرِ حُدُودِهَا. And when he's doing it, he doesn't try to do it with the proper etiquettes. He doesn't try to take his time with the salat. He doesn't try to add a couple mustahabbat. He doesn't try to do a couple ta'qibat after salat. The moment the salat is done, he throws his hands up like this, which, by the way, is bid'ah, because this is not even mustahab, yes? I don't know how we came up with this one, yeah? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. And he's telling the angels to leave at this point, yes? He just did this and ran away. This is بِغَيْرِ حُدُودِهَا. This is, at a spiritual level, it's doing injustice to your salat. He said, the one who does it like this, رَجَعَتْ إِلَى صَاحِبَهَا. The prayer turns back to the person who just performed it. وَهِيَ سَوْدَاءٌ مُظْلِمَةٌ. And his prayer is dark. And it doesn't have the light that was emanating before. تَقُول ضَيَّعْتَنِي. Say, you ruined me. Now it's not saying if I did a basic salat, it's not good, it doesn't have value. It still has value. If you did the worst salat on earth, it's still 10 times better than not praying. If I did, I'll repeat that one more time. If I did the worst salat on earth, and what's the worst salat on earth? I didn't understand even one word of what I said. It's still better than not praying. Because there's still humility in that. There's still humbleness in that. It still breaks your takabbur at a very minimal level. Okay? But if I did it and I didn't put my heart into it, it turns back to me. It says, you ruined me. You gave up this amazing opportunity. ضَيَّعْتَنِي ضَيَّعَكَ اللَّهُ. May Allah treat you the way you treated me. And the salat says you gave up on a golden opportunity. You could have done an amazing job with me. This is the salat. You see the way Ahl Bayt speak about salat. This is just one of the narrations of hundreds on this topic. And inshallah, as we continue through the month of Ramadan, I will speak more about this, dedicating time to worship, and in particular when it comes to salat itself. With Ramadan around the corner, if someone wants to invest in something so that they spiritually grow, yes, your fasting is important. You know, the things that we do in Ramadan are all important. But invest in your prayer. Don't do your salat. Invest in your salat. It's a big difference. There's a big difference between the one who says, oh, well, it's Ramadan, it's busy, Allahu Akbar, I'm going to pray, versus the one who says, 5 times a day, I have the opportunity to invest a couple minutes and walk away with a big return. That is what Salat is. If there's one thing I want to invest in this Ramadan is, I want to become that person who the mountains have to move before I miss a Salat. This is very important. And inshallah, this is one of those things that will help us heavily on this path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين أثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا ثم أصلي وأسلم على نجيبه وجليله وحافظ سره الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرضين بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل وسلم على علي أمير المؤمنين وفاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في أرضك. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. We begin the second Friday khutbah by reminding all of you and myself to maintain the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will continue with the tafsir of Surah Qaf. And we reach these verses of the Quran. بَلْ كَذَّبُوا بِالْحَقِّ لَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ. These people, they asked for the truth to be sent to them. For years and years, they begged Allah, oh Allah, send that prophet that's supposed to come. Send that message that's supposed to come, that truth that's supposed to come. When it came to them, كَذَّبُوا بِالْحَقِّ. When it finally came to them, they rejected the truth. فَهُمْ فِي أَمْنٍ مَرِيجٍ. Because of that, they are in a confusing state. The Quran went back to explain to them that this day of judgment is a real thing. Now the Quran is speaking of this in the context of those who deny the day of judgment. These verses apply to you and I on a different level. There are those who deny the day of judgment, and the Quran is proving to them that this is a reality. There are those who on paper believe that the day of judgment is a real thing, but in practice deny that there is a day of judgment. That's me and you. And these verses of the Quran, so many of them, refer to kuffar, disbelievers. And so we say, yes, this person is kafir, of course. How dare he deny the day of judgment? But then in my own life, I live life as if I don't believe in that day. This is why these verses of the Quran are so important. This is why they're so inspirational. This is why the Quran spends so much time on the day of judgment. Because if it really clicks for me, it will change a lot of things in my life. So he said, these people, they are in a confused state. Okay, so the Quran said, if you guys deny the day of judgment, and you say there's no God running the show in this world, verse 6, أَفَلَمْ يَنْظُرُوا إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. Did they ever lift up their heads and just look up? Because with this sky, what did we do? كَيْفَ بَنَيْنَاهَا. The way we built the sky. وَزَيَّنَّاهَا. The way we beautified it. وَمَا لَهَا مِنْ فُرُوجٍ. And it doesn't have any flaws. This sky has been working for how many years now? Ask scientists, they'll tell you millions, beyond thousands. So someone created this, but did it in a way where for 1,000,000+ years, it's playing its role, whatever that role is. Okay? As the Quran says, هَذَا خَلْقُ اللَّهِ فَأَرُونِ مَاذَا خَلَقَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. This is our creation. Show us what else people out there have created. This is the challenge of the Quran in a different surah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the sky. It's been functioning for millions of years. Have you ever created something that even functions for a million years? No. Not even close. Okay. He said, have you ever looked up? No problem. You haven't looked up. Have you ever looked down? وَالْأَرْضَ مَدَدْنَاهَا. This earth, who spread it out like this? وَالْأَرْضَ مَدَدْنَاهَا وَأَلْقَيْنَا فِيهَا رَوَاسِي. We placed mountains in it so that it would be stabilized. وَأَنْبَتْنَا فِيهَا مِنْ كُلِّ زَوْجٍ بَهِيجٍ. And we put in it pairs of plants that the moment you look at them, they bring you a different level of happiness, a different level of joy. This is why your wife is expecting flowers from you when you come home. I don't know if the brothers are aware of this, yes? Because who put that effect in these flowers? That when you look at it, it brings you bahja. It brings you happiness. Yes? It's refreshing. And you were driving today on the way here, you saw the weather. Okay, we live in Dallas. Weather's never like this, yes? Who put this happiness and joy in this weather? Why is it when the weather gets good, yes, people's akhlaq is better? This is min kulli zawjin bahij. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He created a creation that when you interact with it, it brings you bahja. And you and I sit there and say, yeah, it's natural. No, someone did this. And he did it so well, to you it seems natural. He did it in such a masterful way, you look at it and say, oh yeah, of course, that's what it's supposed to do. Why don't you go ahead and try to do that? You can't do that. Somebody else did that. This is verse 7. The Quran then said, why did we do all of this? Tabsiratan, so that you would open up your eyes, so that these simple phenomena you see in the world, you wouldn't just look at them and carry on with life. This is not tabsira. It's not basira. Basira means when you look at something and then you go one level deeper. That's why in English, normally we would translate it as what? We don't translate it as eyesight. We translate it as insight. What is the difference? You go one level deeper. You understand what's behind this. Why? Because a scientist studies all of this phenomena. But does he have insight into what's the purpose behind all of this? Does he go one level deeper? He doesn't go one level deeper. And neither do you and I when we live life and we don't remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you're at that level, you're working at the level of sight, not at the level of insight. The Quran says on the day of judgment, the disbelievers, they will look at their Lord. It says they don't see their Lord. Now, seeing their Lord in the way that we understand it, of course. They look, but they don't see. This is the difference between sight and insight. He said, "Tabsiratan wa dhikra likulli abdin munib." We made this so that you would look at it and you would return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I missed a prayer. I broke my fast, na'udhu billah. I had an argument with my spouse. I was harsh with my children. Whatever it was. You know what the Quran is saying? The Quran is saying, listen, there's signs all around you of my presence. You shouldn't have to wait until the month of Ramadan. The moment you leave your house, this earth you're walking on, someone is taking care of this. This is dhikra, this is your remembrance. So you have to repent now. The moment you lift your head, you see the sky, this is remembrance for you. What, you were expecting angels to come and speak to you? You were, mashallah, all of us, this is what we expect, yes? Where is he? Where is God? I don't see his angels. Baba, you see his sky and you see his earth. That's enough. This is what the Quran is saying. That's more than enough for you to say there's someone taking care of all of this. Tabsiratan wa dhikra likulli abdin munib. Verse 9 says, you know what else we did? وَنَزَّلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً مُبَارَكًا. You know what else is a very clear sign of our existence? We sent down from the skies ma'an mubaraka, a blessed water, a blessed liquid. Okay, so why does the Quran refer to water as blessed? What's so blessed about water? I thought water is available to everyone. I thought it's not so special anyways. Quran says, no, the water is very special. Why is it so special? So the Quran continues. It says, you know why it's special? فَأَنْبَتْنَا بِهِ جَنَّاتٍ وَحَبَّ الْحَسِيدِ. Through this water, we brought about all sorts of gardens. We brought about all sorts of plants. وَالنَّخْلَ بَاسِقَاتٍ لَهَا طَلْعٌ نَذِيدٌ. This tall palm tree that you see, It came from that drop of water. Okay, so scholars have a discussion here. What does it mean that water is blessed? And what does it even mean for something to have barakah? When they say, this person is a blessed person. When they say, this house is a blessed house. How do you become blessed anyways? And do you have to start acting like super religious? And in your salat, you do all the proper, ihdina as-sirat al-yas. You do all of this and you become blessed. Is that how you become blessed? Why does the Quran call water blessed? Quran calls water blessed and calls other things mubarak in other verses. Why? Because that one thing seems like it may not carry too many blessings and goodness with it. But in reality, it carries many benefits with it. This is the meaning of barakah. Barakah means this $100 that I made, it seems like it should work for me at the level of $100. If it's blessed, it will work for me at the level of $200. How, in what way, in what shape, that's hidden. That's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So question, if I want my house to be blessed, if I want my life to be blessed, if I want my character to be blessed, how do I get a hold of this barakah? If you want to get a hold of this barakah, you have to be like this water. Yani what? And you become a means of benefit for so many people. To the extent you become a means of benefit to others, to that extent you have become mubarak. To that extent you carry barakah with you. Barakah is not just I put this Quran in my house, so now my house is blessed. Barakah is not I just start my ceremony with hadith kisa, so now this ceremony, yes, these are also parts of it. But the Quran, when it refers to barakah, it refers to what? Look at this water. It's one drop, yeah? But how much goodness comes from this one drop? It's mubarak. It's blessed. When you look at it on the surface, you don't see that benefits. You don't see all the good things that can come out of this water. But it carries with it many, many benefits. If we want to become mubarak and carry barakah with us as well, this is how you and I have to become. Are you that person who, when you come into people's lives, you are a means of benefit and blessing for others? Are you a means of benefit for your children? And when you walk into the house, does life become easier or more difficult for them? And some of us have negative barakah. Yeah? When we walk in, we take away the barakah. Are you a means of barakah? Are you mubarak? Am I mubarak? When I see my friends see me, do they say deep down, here he comes, here she comes. Now we have to do this, now we have to do that. Or do they say, oh, here he comes. To the level that you are a means of benefit to others, you are carrying barakah with you. To the extent, whether that's my wealth, whether it is my time, whether it is my expertise, whatever it is, to that extent, I am a means of barakah. And if I don't have anything else, and you and I live in a part of the world where we are blessed with a lot of these things. But the Prophet taught us one thing, and with that, inshallah, I'll bring this to an end. The Prophet taught us one thing. He said, if you don't have anything else, you don't have the wealth, you don't have the time, you don't have the expertise. He said, you know what you do have? You have good akhlaq. Everyone can afford good akhlaq. Everybody. That's why the Prophet said in his hadith, he said, there are those who come to me, and at times I'm not able to fulfill their needs exactly the way they are asking for me. The Muslim Ummah had many needs. The Prophet didn't have some treasure that he was constantly pulling from. He said, فَأَلْقُوهُمْ. He said, at least when you meet them with good akhlaq. That you can afford. So at least when this person is walking away from you, from this interaction, he says, you know what? He couldn't take care of my need, but he cared about me. He wanted to do it, but his hands are tied. And this is why the narration of Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, in Al-Kafi says what? He says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at the heart of a believer. when his brother or sister comes and asks him for a favor, for a need, for a request, and he says, no, I can't do it. If he's truthful in his claim, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards him as if he fulfilled the need of his brother. Why? Because he showed that care. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we enter into the month of Ramadan with this understanding, with this mindset, more than anywhere else within our own households. And imagine if people lived lives with this understanding and with this approach. Would we be seeing the war crimes that are happening today in Palestine? Would we be seeing the hunger that we see today in Palestine? And I said there are people, they don't believe in the Day of Judgment. This is exactly what you see. When a person doesn't believe in the Day of Judgment, there's nothing that can stop him anymore. There is no level of greed that he will not stop from. Yes? You might look at him and say, oh, he's an old man and he comes and goes and he seems like a very nice person. Like, this one, can he really be the one who's starving millions of people and thousands of children? It almost seems impossible. Because he cracks jokes too, and they bring him on TV shows too, and it's difficult for us to understand. Yes, this is politics at a different level. This is gaslighting, as they say, at a different level, where you start to doubt yourself. And did I really see children being blown up? Did I really see families being starved? But this one's wearing a suit and a tie, and he seems very, professional. This is a person who doesn't believe in the Day of Judgment. He will starve millions, the system will starve millions, and then it will put a smile on its face as if it has done nothing. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to never make us amongst those who have lost their belief in the Day of Judgment. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما. قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم أدخل على أهل القبور السرور. اللهم أغني كل فقير. اللهم أشبع كل جائع. اللهم اكسو كل عريان. اللهم اقضي دين كل مدين. اللهم فرج عن كل مكروب. اللهم رد كل غريب. اللهم فك كل أسير. اللهم أصلح كل فاسد من أمور المسلمين. اللهم اشفي كل مريض. اللهم سد فقرنا بغناك. اللهم غير سوء حالنا بحسن حالك. اللهم اقض عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر إنك على كل شيء قدير. صلوات.
Mu'mineen, just a reminder about the upcoming programs in the month of Ramadan, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, we are blessed this year to have 3 speakers speaking this month of Ramadan here at CFK. Our programs, inshallah, start Thursday, March 14th. This first weekend, we will have 4 programs, Thursday through Sunday, and we are honored to have Sheikh Amin Rastani speaking at these on these nights. The second week, our programs from Thursday, March 21st through Sunday, March 24th. We are honored to have Sheikh Sadi speak at these nights. And then our programs from Tuesday, March 26th onwards, we are honored to have Sheikh Mahdi speaking on these nights all the way through the end of the month. Our programs are scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. before iftar and are to conclude with Salaat, and then iftar will be served here in person at CFK. It is important to mention that we do not do any active fundraising during Ramadan or Muharram. And if you are interested to make a contribution towards CFK for this month of Ramadan, please visit our website, cfkdfw.org, where you can look at the sponsorship slots that have been populated. And alhamdulillah, we have already had a lot of donors make contributions already. Please select the slot that you wish to donate for, fill out the Google form, and then pay via the link that is at the bottom of the webpage. For any membership-related questions and queries, we have Brother Asif Patel present here. He is our membership director. And inshallah, for any questions, he will be able to answer them. Before I end, I would like to request everyone to please recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of today's Niyaz sponsors. And let us please also include our own marhumin and the marhumin of the Ummah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله وأتوب إليه الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله سبحان الله والحمد لله الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
Let us recite all together. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا الله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته، السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.